going to start off with a question that my daughter asked me recently, talking about AI, and it's a very common question that you hear in the media all the time. But she was very specific, knowing that I've been in the industry for a long time. She asked, hey, will AI replace your job one day? Right? And it's a very tough question, right, to answer. So I kind of kept it at a very high level, but I said, it will not, it may or it may not, but one thing it will not replace it is that AI will never be able to replace the kind of dad jokes that I crack with them, right? So, because I feel that I'm the best at dad jokes. So anyway, with that said, I just wanted to keep you all awake right after lunch. I'm Sampath Paranavithana. I'm the head of global strategy for Telecom for InfoVision. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here with TM Forum and some of the best in breed in the telecom industry. Very interestingly, almost 80 years ago, it seems Alan Turing has mentioned that he wants to invent a machine that can learn through experience, right? And it's a very interesting statement that I read no more than 2 weeks ago because I was preparing for this, right? So, so if you really think about it, you know, what that statement really meant, of course, he's a smart genius guy, but 80 years ago for someone to think that they want to build a machine that can learn through experience also means that, you know, back then the foundation was laid for this kind of thinking to happen, and it will evolve over time. And then the next 50 to 100 years, we will see this AI being taken to the next level, right? So, and I think we'll be a part of that journey, an exciting journey, all of us. And as you see, I mean, from a monetary point of view, the AI, especially in the telecom industries, forecasted to grow to about $50 billion within the next 10 years. And I think if all of us somehow hang in there, we'll hopefully end up being rich people. So with that said, I would like to I take the pleasure in introducing and inviting my colleague at InfoVision, who's an AI advocate and evangelist. The way I would like to address him, Abhilash Vantaram, who's joining me on stage. He's the Vice President and Global Head of Engineering, AIML, Cloud and Data for InfoVision. And together with our panelists, who I'll be introducing very shortly, we are planning to drive a very insightful and thought-provoking and a collaborative session, mostly collaborative. And we will plan on opening each section out to the audience, and we would really love for you all to, we would love for you to be participating in these conversations, you know, from a questions point of view, thought-sharing perspective, etc. Right? Today's topic, as you already know, how can telecom monetize AI, right? From a data point of view, customer experience point of view, and then also network automation point of view. And to do this, we have some of the best in the industry joining us today. I would like to invite Mr. Vivek Gaur, Vice President Engineering from Coal Technology Services in India, and Mr. Nilesh Mahajan, Vice President at Geo Platforms, and Mr. Alhad Tamhani, who's the Vice President of Geo Platforms as well. With that said, we have a 75-minute run towards a lot of content that we want to cover. I hand it over to Abhi. Abhi, please take over.
Thank you so much, Sampath. And let's get seated. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. I understand lunch was sumptuous, and you guys had to be rushed into this one, right? So really appreciate you guys being here, and welcome to the esteemed panel. So glad to be sharing the space with you guys today. So, like Sampath mentioned, my name is Abhilash Vantaram. I go by Abhi, and I head the Emerging Technologies Division, which includes traditional transformation technologies from a cloud and data perspective, and anything to do with futuristic technologies, including AI and others. So some of the interesting stuff that you've seen, a lot of those have been implemented by our teams, and so I have a very exciting job in trying to look at what the future art of possible is and how to make that a reality and actually be adoptable into the industry. With that, let me also mention that today's topic especially on the telco side, since all of you guys are here, you guys understand the complexity of the data that we have and how much opportunity there is, whether it is in terms of customer experience or it is in terms of operational excellences or new business opportunities, and how to monetize some of the data we have, the opportunities we have here. So there is such a widespread of topics that are very core and inherent to the telco industry, and it comes with its own challenges as well, right? So today, in today's world, AI is definitely making things possible, right? But to start with, I'd like to see with a show of hands from, actually not even a show of hands, anybody who's interested, in your own mind, if you have to pick one word for AI in telco, what would that be? Shout out. We are all in closed doors here. Game changer. Okay? Anybody else? Revenue, money, nice. And? Monetization, money. Wow. Autonomous, okay? Making things happen, removing. That is really nice, okay? Necessity. So we're hearing a lot of positive things here, right? So we're talking about, it's a necessity in today's world. We're talking about, there's a lot of money that AI can make in the industry, right? But I've also heard harbinger in the past, the same question. We've heard negative connotations as well. AI is going to be a harbinger. It's going to be, what was that, Skynet from Terminator, which, who knows, right? So, but let me put the panel on spot here. So, Nilesh, what do you think? What is your one word for AI in telco?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Very positive.
I'll probably say intelligence.
Intelligence. Artificial, though. Yeah. Awesome.
I would say partnership. Partnership of risk-bearing, risk-taking capabilities and looking at the opportunities together. So partnership of multiple things, it enables and it brings forward all of that. So
awesome.
Great partnership, I think.
So responsible partnership. Awesome. Terrific. So a very good spread of words, as you guys can see, right? So we're talking about, fortunately everything seems to be positive. So this is a very, very positive room. So I hope you guys will take it easy when one of you nods off and the next person kicks you off, because we don't want any of you sleeping here after the sumptuous lunch. We have some very interesting insights that are going to come out in the next hour. As I mentioned, if you look at the whole topic here, we're going to be breaking out this topic into 4 different segments. The first segment is going to be talking about customer experience, and these segments are going to revolve around artificial intelligence and how AI is infusing into these things, what the enablement is. Glad that you guys are all positive people, because we don't want to really try to convince you that AI is there to stay and it's going to make differences. I think you're all bought into that whole narrative by now. So with that, the first thing is going to be around what customer experiences are, and we want to also start looking at what the practical problems in achieving these things are. So we want to make it a lot more interactive, a lot more real. The second subtopic here will be around autonomy of networks. Somebody mentioned AI with autonomy, which is very, very key in terms of operationalization, operational excellence, and things like those. The third area is going to be around the enabler for all of these things, data and insights, and how AI is actually helping you bring this data to actually run your final insights and everything, what the challenges there are and what the business opportunities are. And then we'll talk about AI monetization, because everybody seems to be interested in money, and AI is money, right? So with that, with those 4 topics, I hand it over to Sampath to get started with the panel.
Thank you, Avi. So we will very quickly get into the topics, because that's where the gist of the matter is. And but before that, the way it's going to be structured is, like Abhi said, there's going to be 4 sections, and each section we will try to stick to the panelists. We will try to stick to about 8 minutes, right? 8 to 10 minutes, and then offer about 5 minutes to the audience for questions, thought sharing, right? Ideas, etc. So with that said, the first topic in this context is, how is AI transforming customer experience? Now, of course, we try to qualify it within the telecom industry, but we will try to do that as much as possible, but not necessarily. I mean, if someone wants to bring in a use case from a different industry and kind of tie it to the telecom, you're welcome as well. With that said, I would like to extend that question. Would like to ask Nilesh to take the first question. Nilesh, how do you see, we talk about when it comes to customer experience in AI, we talk about hyper-personalization, right? We talk about predictive analytics. How is all that playing into creating a better customer experience from a telecom perspective? And please do shed some light with actual experiences that Jio kind of has had and success stories as well.
Sure. So customer experience 2.0 is all about customer centricity. If you look at evolution of CSPs over a period of time, telecom companies used to be company-centric, wherein there would be a product that was launched or a service that was launched, and customers had no choice but to take it as it is given. Right, that has moved from there to looking at customers into different segments. So customer segmentation and providing products and services that cater to those segments became the thing which marketing teams used to work on, and products were being designed from that perspective. Now things are changing and becoming more granular, and we are looking at having deep understanding of customers, and the unit around which all the efforts would be moving around for customer experience would be the individual customer. So hyper personalization at a mass scale is the name of the game. And the only way we can achieve is by analyzing huge amount of data that our customers are churning out day in and day out, and using that predictive analysis to customize the products and offers, or even at feature level to customize it to cater to individual customers' needs. So to give you an example from Jio's perspective, now we have a digital media business wherein we have Jio Cinema or Jio Hotstar, right, wherein recommendations for the content become very important. So we cannot offer the same set of content to all our users, right? So we use different technologies, like there's a technology called watch discounting, wherein we keep track of what has been watched by which customer, because nobody would want to come back to a digital media platform and see the same content that they spent 1.5 hours or 2 hours watching, right? So watch discounting kind of filters out all of the content that you watched. Second type of technology that is used is creating custom content trays. So for example, since you watched this, you might have seen across different platforms, since you watched this is what we recommend to you. Or since you like this is the type of content that we recommend to you. We also add a time access to it, wherein whatever you had watched earlier, you might want to watch again after certain time frame, right? So using this blend of analysis of large amount of data, we can actually offer a unique personalized experience to the end user. So if you look at Jio as an organization, we cater to around 470 million customers in the country. That means every third person in this country uses a Jio service or product, right? So our objective is to thrive to provide 470 million unique Jio experiences to the users, rather than saying everybody looks at Jio as one organization, but there will be those many unique experiences. So that is the way we look at it.
Sure. And with that said, Nilesh, do you also see things like sentiment analysis being a part of that hyper-personalization? And do you see any use cases really being deployed along those lines?
Sentiment analysis is a very important communication mechanism, because if you look at it, most of the telcos would run campaigns to talk to their customers, right? They would say that this is a new product that we have brought in, this is a new service, this is how we benefited to you. How do we listen back to the customers? We can listen back to the customers if they call us or they reach out to us, or in today's world wherein social media drives everything, people, rather than talking to the company or company's representatives, would go and put it on social media, right? So we keep on listening to all these social media channels and gather all the user-generated content around Jio and Jio's products and services, and then analyze it at a mass scale and create different heat maps in terms of what kind of sentiment they are providing, and then based on that we can come up with actionable research.
Abhi, do you want to take a quick minute to kind of shed some light on InfoVision's, the work that's being done from a sentiment analysis perspective, and how we kind of address some of the expectations from Telecom.
No, absolutely. Okay. I just grew a little taller. I realized I'm not able to see the guys in the back, so that means you can't see me. So I just grew a little taller here. But so when we look at sentiment analysis, again, the kind of work that we've at InfoVision we've done very much resonate with what you're saying. That these are a lot of very traditional and very needed use cases in terms of looking at, understanding what the sentiment, the negative, the positive of it. Negative is more important than positive, obviously, right? But if we switch the context a little bit from customer as an external customer or a consumer to an internal customer. And it is also very important to look at internal customers as well. Since Nilesh has already covered some part of the external customers, I'll talk about the internal customers. So some of the kinds of things that we're also doing is when calls and everybody has call centers, and when calls are coming in, and there is a lot of pressure on the call center agents to be able to, meet the expectations of the customers. First of all, we don't want the ideal customer experience is if the customer doesn't have a problem, they're not calling in, right? Ideal customer experience is not when customer calls in and says that I've had a good experience on this call. They should not be calling. But when they call in, how best do we service them? That's very key. And the problem with some of these internal customers per se, the call center agents and the service agents, there is a lot of churn. So how do you normalize? And this goes back to external customer experience as well, right? So if I'm calling a call center and I'm talking to Sampath, who obviously has gray hair and is experienced and is seasoned, and you know what you're talking about, I'll have a really good experience. But if I talk to somebody else, I don't want to take the esteemed panelist names, but if I talk to somebody else, right, and they're relatively new, they're not necessarily that seasoned, the experience of a customer is purely dependent upon the knowledge and the navigation of the agent, right? So how do we normalize this? It's a very, very important part of, So if I am an angry customer, if I'm a dissatisfied customer, I'm calling, there is a lot of pressure on the agents as well to figure out how you can pacify me, how you can give the right service. So all of the conversations that we are having, we are doing a lot of work in terms of looking at sentiment analysis in that. What does that sentiment mean? How do we leverage the likes of generative AI, agentic AI, the access to all of these agents that generative AI and agentic architects have in the future to be able to, in real time, provide the right information at the fingertips to the agents. Also help them understand, the best of the agents have done this during this time. This is a time to induce empathy into your discussion, right? Again, it's a co-pilot. The agent's discretion to be able to take that or not. But these are the kinds of things that we look at from a sentiment analysis. While we look at wider trends of sentiment analysis from, do they like these kind of content or not? That is a different kind of sentiment. But the other kind of sentiment is real time, which is also a very, very challenging thing to do. Is real time when a conversation is happening, how does a system evaluate the sentiment, convert that sentiment to change that experience, and make sure that we are having the end customer go back with the right taste in their mouth. So we're doing things like those aspects.
Thank you, Abhi. We'll jump on to agentic AI, which is again a very hot topic these days, right? And
Did I stir the pot?
Absolutely. Okay. Nilesh, what is Jio's view on agentic AI, and where have you all actually deployed such capabilities at this stage?
So I think agentic AI kind of boils down to a solution to the problem statement that you just mentioned, wherein human beings serving angry customers, whereas those human beings keep on churning on a regular basis, does not really give that kind of personal or next best experience, if we have to call it, right? So agentic AIs are basically proactive versions of AI who are autonomous in nature, right, as against traditional AI. And so using the word traditional for AI seems to be an irony, but as you said, in 8 years a lot has happened, right? So this automation and being able to make decisions on its own is a capability that agentic AI is bringing to the table, which can be used to take care of the problem that you mentioned, wherein if we want to give an experience to the customer wherein wherever the customer is agitated or not happy about a product or service. So Geo has used agentic AI in many ways. So we have a solution called as Hello Geo, which is a chatbot and which has virtual assistants embedded into it. So if you are facing a problem, you can communicate with our chatbot in whichever Indic languages. We have text-to-speech, speech-to-text conversion, we have translations. And using that, once we know the customer's problem, then we have troubleshooting agents which can directly be run. So there's a service called the Run Diagnostic, for example, which can run on its own and tell you where exactly the problem is located. If it is a wireline fiber network, if there's a problem with the set-top box, for example, you can do your own diagnostic test. You don't have to talk to a human being, and you can actually identify the problem area, and a solution will also be suggested. And in most of the cases, the customer will be able to solve the problem themselves. Right? That really helps in giving a better experience to the user.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nilesh.
Having said that, agentic AI, we also have to be careful about the guardrails around it. Because if AI becomes autonomous, then we have to take care of the hallucinations and those kind of problems that AI brings.
Correct. I think if I let Abhi go at it, he's going to take the entire hour talking about this, so I'm not going to give you that opportunity, Abhi.
We had really funny and challenging experiences with
So
hallucinations.
essentially what he's saying is brevity is not my strong suit, right? Yeah.
So with that said, let me open up questions and thoughts for the audience. Please feel free, and if you raise your hand, there'll be somebody who will bring a mic over to you.
That will be
Yes, that'll be Divya right there from InfoVision. We have a question coming up.
Hi, this is Nikhil from Vodafone Idea. So my question is for Nilesh, is in terms of measurability, have you seen what is the significant measurable impact that you've seen in terms of consumer experience and satisfaction before and after you've implemented this? And are there hard numbers that you're able to use to actually justify or support the impact that you've had?
So I'll not have the numbers right of my fingertips, but having said that, the number of calls that directly used to come to the call centers have significantly gone down. And this we could identify because during COVID, when all of us went home, our call center ability also dipped down, right? Having said that, the overall load could be handled by much smaller team size. We also are able to find out incidences wherein customer does not even have to call us. So the agentic AI is able to identify problems even before the customer has to reach out to us, and we are in a proactive manner able to solve it.
We can take maybe one more question. Anybody has?
We have a very positive but a very shy audience here today.
So there's one more question.
Thank you. Hi, this is Bhavin from Vodafone. So my question is, see, customer experience indirectly, you are giving time back to the customer. Okay. So somewhere or the other, what should be a limit? Because it cannot be that anything which customer wants can be done by himself, right? So where do you draw a line and say, okay, this is enough. I'm not going to do anything further than that. Let him call me, right? Because somewhere or the other, you can't automate everything and ask customer to do something, right? So that's the question.
So the approach that we have taken is whatever can be automated, we have tried and automated. Having said that, if customer calls you and says that this is something I don't want to do it myself and I need help, then we can always provide that help. So the approach that can be taken is a hybrid approach wherein you provide all the automation abilities, but some customers would just say, I can't figure this out myself. So we'll have to go and service that customer. But it will still reduce the number of times you have to do it.
Let me ask a very different kind of a question. Maturity of agentic capabilities, will it ever come to a point where the actual physical agents will be replaced by agentic solutions? You see that happening?
It's a difficult question, the same way your daughter asked you, right?
But the only thing is you cannot.
It's a very dangerous, you're just opening Pandora's box in this room. So.
No, yes, go ahead. I'll go ahead.
So history is full of people who said that technology can't do this, and eventually technology started to do it.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is Vivek. I'll just say that the agentic AI capabilities have to be looked at from a very different perspective also. I mean, I understand, Nilesh, you focus on how agents can be, and your question is about how agents can be replaced. I think the agentic AI capability is more to be seen and more to be explored and more to be developed when we look at inter-agent communications. I think that's the whole power of the agentic AI, and that will grow up. So if I take about, for an example, a B2B organization in a setup where one agent of an AI model is talking to another agent of an AI model, and then to the third one, and then to the fourth one, that gives us a comprehensive capability to do end-to-end activities within the AI framework and the model. That is a very powerful thing. Will it replace human beings? I don't know whether it will replace human beings or no, but it will replace a lot of need for different systems. So if you look at today, the telecom sector has a huge arena of OSS, BSS systems. I feel that will be challenged very much. So more than the humans, I think it will be challenging the systems that we have. So the power of agentic AI has to be seen and evolved as we see the data maturity happens across the board.
It's a very good.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to add on top of that, absolutely, completely resonate and agree with what you're saying. But when we look at the agentic architecture itself, you're looking at generative AI being the main brain of all of this, and then you have all of your agents, a network of agents that it has a disposal to, that it needs to have that brain to figure out what it is working with. And like you mentioned, the mesh of agents that have to inter-agent communications and those things. So the brain is the one that is going to start figuring out how all of these things are going to happen. It's going to make those decisions. And which is where the fundamental flaw or the challenge, the practical challenges that we're going to go into. It's not the agents the agents are more deterministic. Can they do something? Can they not do something? I think we'll know that. But it is the brain that can be fallible. So that is where I think a lot of governance has to come in, a lot of training has to come in terms of making sure that, even for instance, hallucinations and things like those biases, we've all heard all of these things. But there are some really good ideas that are coming out in terms of, inherent validations. Using something similar to generative adversarial networks, you can pit a couple of two different LLMs to figure out whether the outcome is right or not. Very similar to generative adversarial networks, right? So there are some really good ideas that are coming out in terms of how to auto-validate what is coming out of it and make sure that the thought process of the brain is in the right track. Knowledge engineering is another such piece of it. So there are some really good, the technologies that have always been there, how are you now connecting all those technologies to make sure that we're solving tomorrow's problems, especially with the brain? I think those are really good practical solutions that we do see for the practical problems that we've all heard about before. So.
For all practical reasons and to maybe close this session, right? I think the positives we've seen.
Segment.
Sorry?
Segment.
For this section, yeah. For this segment of the conversation, the positives we've seen in customer experience and AI's involvement or capabilities that's brought in has been immense. Especially for store agents, right? I mean, post-COVID, we've seen a huge take-up of customers wanting more human interaction, right? There's more traffic happening at retail stores than ever before in certain parts of the world, I would say, majority parts of the world. And what does this mean? The agents are inundated with lots of requests, complaints, right? Lots of data coming in. How does this all work out? So I think it's a very timely capability that's being brought out to agents, and I think very simply said, the agents are loving it, and I feel that the whole question of will that replace the agents, I think I'm going to kind of postpone that the question and the answer for that. So with that said, Avi, I'll hand over to you to take us to the next section, which is network automation and AI.
Absolutely, yeah. And I understand Vivek is also on time, so we'll be very time conscious for Vivek on this one. So on the second segment of this whole discussion, we've talked about customer experiences. Now let's talk about operational aspects of it, right? So when we look at AI infused into operational elements, I mean, all of us know one of the biggest spends for telcos is your network operations, the upkeep of them, right? Or provisioning. All of those things have a lot of impact in terms of what your spends are, and that inadvertently has an impact on how customers experience these things, the price points that they're looking at, and all of those as well, right? So it's imperative to look at how to reduce these operational expenses, how to automate a lot of these things, especially from your network automation and optimization perspective. So I'll start with Vivek. So how do you see AI driving your self-optimized networks? And again, similar to what Sampath was asking, if you can give us a view of how Colt is looking at self-optimization networks, and what are some of the practical examples that you've looked at in terms of deploying these? In fact, even if you go into what are some of the practical challenges you faced, that will be awesome.
Sure. So let me start off from a little bit of business perspective. So Colt is a B2B organization, largest infrastructure service provider in Europe. I don't have a lot of experience around the retail customers, so we won't go there too much. But from a B2B perspective, what does a minute of a telco outage means for service provider? Gartner has been able to quantify that to somewhere around 6,000 euros for a minute.
Wow.
And that is huge. And if you look at how many minutes of outage does a service provider typically go through, and this is an approximation which does not really factor all the business impact to the customers.
Right.
So that is the driver, I would say. That is the starting point, that there is a huge stake of customers and as such the service providers for every outage. Now that driver tells us to see and think about, can humans be the most efficient resolution technique, or can there be more efficient resolution technique to bring down this downtime? Can we do some proactive monitoring? Can we do some proactive healing? Can we do some proactive configuration? All of those needs have driven the concept of self-optimization in the networks. Autonomous networks is a vision, is a view. A lot of us believe in it. The typical challenge that telco again go through is they have a lot of legacy networks also. So how do you bring around all of your platforms, all of your systems to make one single autonomous network? I think that view is very far off. So what we are now trying to do is, can we bring on brownfield environments? Can we develop brownfield environments where we can have autonomous networks in sections where we can, to bring about the best possible efficient models? So that's the approach. When I talk about self-optimization networks, there are concepts like self-monitoring, self-healing, self-configuration. Again, some stats tell us that if you have, if you use some of these concepts, you can be 20% more efficient in your capacity utilization. I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how. Let me say a typical capacity management process would go look at the spikes in your network. And if there are spikes, they'll start provisioning and triggering augmentation of the network. But if you have more AI-based models which can do a historic traffic pattern analysis and a predictive traffic pattern analysis depending upon the ecosystem, then this process becomes much more efficient. So there is an opportunity to have capacity management process much more efficient through these models. Similarly, there are stats. You want to come in?
I do have this sporadic but spontaneous, but I have a question there. So if you look at a B2B, let's say manufacturing plant, right, and you have, instead of looking at spikes, you're using ML models to be able to predict what it is and then scale appropriately, or self-heal or whatnot, right? So in terms of that capacity planning and things like those, have you already looked into how machine data, IoT data, and the capacity that they are looking for, or any scheduled maintenance that can come in from their backend systems and things like those? Are you also looking at connecting this kind of the data across from the business itself that can help give proactive indications to how you can react?
It's the maturity of the ecosystem, Abhi. So if you look at within code or within telco or service provider domain, they will need to connect all these data points across different network platforms, across different technology platforms, even across different products and services. But at some point, we'll also have to look at what is the ecosystem outside the service provider looking at. Are there Olympic games? Are there other games? Are there other things that are triggering a change or shift in a traffic pattern? All of those things will also need to be incorporated, and that's where the whole power of AI comes in. ML has been in use for some of these technologies always, right? We've been doing ML-based capacity management or monitoring of the networks for some time. But the power of AI comes in that it can connect rest of the ecosystem and make one homogeneous ecosystem where different data points can be analyzed to predict much more powerfully. So,
Terrific. I hope that vision comes true.
well, it's a vision. So, do I just continue on my thought process then?
I'd also like to go back to Alhad as well, but if you can finish your thought.
Yeah, I was just saying that, so there are elements around capacity, there are elements about network monitoring, network configurational changes, there are elements about healing the network on its own. Predictive maintenance and predictive analysis has been driven for quite some time again on ML base. The limitations have been more around how do you get the real data, the correct data across different systems. So again, to my initial point, I'd like to close on that, that the ecosystem within the service provider of the systems that we use has to mature as well. People feel that data quality is not there. The data quality is not there because the system quality is not there, because the network quality is not there in terms of connectedness between the systems. So I think this whole thing will have to come together, and there are progress happening, there are steps that are happening, but the journey of autonomous network has to be looked into phases, and I think we have definitely embarked on phase one.
Terrific. So let me pull on the same thread. Alhad, Vivek mentioned that their focus is predominantly B2B, right? But from Jio's perspective, as you start looking at also the B2C space, if you can give your thoughts and Jio's vision around, self-optimizing, optimizing networks, and if you can also give a big picture view around not just the SONs, but also the network downtime, the predictive analytics that Vivek was touching on, and any proactive alerting mechanisms and things like those that actually give you those indicators. How does this whole thing come together for you from a consumer space perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Thank you. Let me first thank TM Forum and InfoVision for inviting us to this interesting topic. And let me wish all of you a very happy Holi today. So I have some difference in terms of, what we have been talking about autonomous networks. And what I feel is similar to what the automobile industry experienced the Tesla moment, or maybe the Gen AI community experienced the so-called Sputnik moment. Autonomous network is yet to experience that kind of a Tesla or a Sputnik moment as of now. And why I say this is because, there is a lot of overwhelming set of information that is available from the autonomous perspective. However, how do we channelize all this information and how do we create a system? So my primary focus, and as I said earlier, we cannot talk about these 3 points which you mentioned in silos, but they are a part of an IT framework or an AI framework that you need to develop. And this is precisely what we have done in Jio. We have our own, as a product owner, I know how to create an AI-based framework in your product, and what are the phases that we typically use to create this kind of an inclusion of AI use cases. So there are 4 phases which we typically talk about. One, the first phase being the sensing phase, and this sensing phase actually talks about collecting a lot of data around the use cases of what has to be implemented, and these use cases typically come in a hyper collaboration between typically the IT team and the operations team. and the operations SMEs specifically, because you need to know what are the use cases that you need to define. And alongside, what we also do is that we do the ML kind of a algorithm. We run the algorithm on the available data set, and we try to find out some pattern. And we discuss those patterns with the ITS, the operations SMEs. So once we have the list of use cases in front of us, the second part that we typically take care is envisioning. And this, when we talk about envisioning, we are also working towards a kind of a position. I mean, we all know that there is a position called data scientist, which evolved over the last 7 years. We are talking about a position called as network autonomist. Okay, and that position will help the person, and I mean, he will be the bridge between the networks as well as the automation and the use cases that surround. Okay, and he is the person who will actually try to map whatever use cases that we have along with the various AI/ML algorithms that are available in the market, or probably he can create some, because we have created our own algorithm specifically around some use cases that we have implemented. Then he will also benchmark those algorithms against the output values. He's also responsible in terms of creating the APIs. If there are some additional APIs that are required for integrating between the systems and the data models, he can create those APIs. And that's where TM Forum also comes into picture, because all those APIs that we talk about are aligned to the ODA framework. And we also get those APIs certified as a part of our product, so that our component also gets certified eventually. So that's how we do, and that's how we have done at the moment. The third phase being the constructing phase. In fact, as a part of the envisioning phase, we also take care of, not just the back-end part of it. We also create GenAI kind of an algorithm, or LLMs, that are specifically used for the field force. So let's say, for example, there was a fiber cut, and the engineer goes there and replaces, and he puts the fiber cut, or he resolves the fiber cut. He is able to question the UI that he has, and he can check using the natural language whether the fiber cut has been restored and the customers are now out of the service degradation or not. So that's how the GenAI also comes into picture. The third phase being the constructing phase, where we actually start building those algorithms, the use cases using the algorithms that we discussed. The critical factor here is, and those were the challenges that we faced, is in having the test data into place, or you cannot have the production data into the developing systems. So that's where one of the challenges that we faced in terms of fetching the data from the production and having a kind of a flow that will allow us to test our algorithms and reduce the outcome bias. Okay. The last phase being reinforcement, and that reinforcement phase, what it tells us is whatever was intended as a part of the business objectives are being viewed specifically from the outcome of that particular use case. And that's where, again, the bias comes into picture, where if you feel that there is some deviation in terms of the output versus what was intended for, we try to change the configuration parameters, and we eventually, roll out that agentic AI into the production. So that's how I envision, as a part of whatever those 3 points that you mentioned, as a part of predictive maintenance and those things. Thank you.
So in the production data issue, I mean, that is, eventually we'll get into the data part of it as well, but that is a very key problem, right? I mean, the silos of data that we have and everything, and you really cannot use the production data into your training and everything. So how did you solve have you looked into, again, AI-infused solutions like synthetic data and others, and what were the challenges there?
So at times we had to create our own synthetic data, synthetic attributes also. And we had to create a data which was very similar to, the RAN or a core or a IP MPLS kind of a data. So that's how we tried doing it. But there are some other techniques also where we can create, using the past data, we can simulate and we can create a synthetic data using some tools which are available, and then we can simulate our, we can check our algorithms against the data.
Avi, can I?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
So autonomous networks have been spoken of for a very long time in the
Right.
telecom industry. Right? Telcos have been claiming AI networks are autonomous, and there's a maturity model as well with different stages. Now, my intention is not to ask at which stage is Geo at, but rather frame the question in a different way. And Vivek, I would like you to pitch in as well as Ahad. What are some of the challenges that Geo faces, or telecoms as a whole, faces, right? And if you can share your thoughts on that in becoming at some level of higher maturity, right? Because I really don't see telecoms coming and saying we are at the topmost maturity level right now from autonomous perspective, right? So if you can shed some light, that would be great. Ahad and then Vivek.
Uh, One of the challenges that I feel again is in terms of data accuracy. People are reluctant to directly roll out something and the system's taking action on its own without even if the model has been tested to the nth level. People are reluctant to, I mean the operations team specifically are reluctant to directly roll out a model which will keep on taking actions on its own unless it is proven. I mean, I'll give you an example. What used to happen is there are a huge number of sites that we have, around 50 million or probably 100 million sites that we have, and each of these sites will have different utility management systems which will support in case if there is a mains fail. Okay, you have battery backup and then you have DG backup. Okay. One of the use cases that we implemented is, and that's what we took the action. I mean, that was an automated action. One of the use cases that we implemented is based on the battery. When the site falls on the battery, we try to analyze the health of the battery, the position of the location, the lat long of that particular site, the day of the week, the time of the day. And then we try to correlate based on the past data that whether this site, which is on this particular battery, live battery, will it go to the DG or not? And if there is a possibility that, based on the health of the battery, if the site goes on the DG, we trigger a work order to the engineer so that the engineer goes and tries to replace and tries to put an additional battery so that we try to avoid the use of diesel to the least possible extent. And that's where when I probably say that, the monetary benefit is much more than the sustainability benefit. That's where we try to, save. We have saved around 15,000 liters of diesel by using this kind of a correlation, which contributes to, I don't know how many kilos of CO2. But this is one action that we had implemented automatically without any kind of an intervention so that, the engineer goes and does whatever is required as a part of the battery replacement.
Awesome. Vivek, please.
Yeah, I think I was touching on this earlier also, but a little bit. I feel that there are different telcos in different spaces. One of the big challenge that we have is that we have a lot of historic and legacy networks. So when we talk about autonomous network, it really means that the network should be able to decide on its own what has to be taken as a decision. And for that to happen, there has to be a system which understands all those legacy networks and their parameters also to be able to correct it. Because collecting data is one thing, but taking an action would be very specific to that network element or network device or that network component, which means that the system should be able to understand those network specifications. And now, to be able to do that for a lot of legacy network, it's not possible. So that's one thing. Also, a lot of networks and systems do not support or are not really in that evolved state of API integrations and stuff like that. So that's the second challenge that we have. The third one is that the whole space is very dynamic for telecom space. It's not like a hyperscaler data center where you have a static state or is largely a static state. Our network and customer base is very dynamic on a day-to-day basis because of the large customer base. So making a decision today and implementing a that decision tomorrow, the state will change. So how do you keep that in go as well is the third challenge I feel. So I think those 3-4 things, and then obviously the maturity of AI models itself and the maturity of the system, autonomous capabilities that can be brought in, along with the skill set that can implement some of these things. I think those are the 4 large areas of challenge that I would say.
Awesome, awesome topic. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to steal the audience from their questions. So, raise of hands, yes.
Hi, my name is Mayuresh from Vodafone. I have a question for Vivek. You actually talked about auto healing concept in the network automation. So what exactly that concept is, auto healing? We have a resilience, we have redundancies, we have load balancing. All these are now part of almost all the networks. What is more that we are expecting as auto healing?
Sure. I think the network layer are different, and network layers are, their maturity is different also in terms of resilience and stuff like that. Some of the optical networks cannot be built resilient in that sense. So if you look at what is the power that is being transmitted on through a transponder in an optical network, what is the receiving power at the other end, there is proven data that shows that you can look at some of those parameters proactively, and you can predict how long will this link be really up, and at what stage this link will go down. Fiber cuts, nobody can predict, but even fiber cuts are being predicted these days, depending upon the geography and the location and all of those things. But purely from a health of the network perspective, these devices are intelligent enough to transmit through telemetry their capabilities and states, and that historic trend lets you do the predictive analysis. And depending upon that predictive analysis, you can choose to take decisions to say that, okay, the device itself can increase the power or tune the power up and down. So those kind of things are possible. The concept is about understanding the current state, matching it with the historic data or the AI model, and then taking the right decisions automatically without any human intervention. So that's the concept of self-healing. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, this is Yogi from Vodafone Idea. So how can we see this network automation in the space of satellites and the upcoming 5G advanced and 6G, the RAN AI?
Star. I can probably talk about the terrestrial KPIs, but there would be some KPIs associated with the Airlink interfaces also. But of course, you will need to have a backhaul to support all the data network. And basically, like how you have the radio access network, you will have some kind of signal degradation probably, which can be observed as a part of, the communication between the receiver and the low orbit satellite. And that's how probably you can monitor those kind of signals and correlate it with the backhaul that you have. That's something which comes to my mind. Probably you would want to add.
Yeah, I think the question, if I'm able to understand, is more about how can you bring automation in the field of non-terrestrial networks, whether it is 5G, 6G, or satellite. I think automation, I see automation at different planes, and it is not just related to network alone. Automation is again an end-to-end journey where your customer experience, as we started off, right from the customer initiation, the customer life cycle can be automated. So first thing is, a lot of us, especially in telco space, think mostly from a technical perspective, but I think the customers and the business aspect is much wider and much more complex also. So if we can automate a lot of those elements of customer journey, irrespective of what network is running behind, that is first phase, I would say. The second is with respect to these networks also, there's huge space of automation. In fact, much more, because there is the network by themselves are much more flexible. How can you tune the antenna? How can you tune the satellite? These days we have satellite to satellite communication also. So there are satellite communication that don't have bases so often. So those need to be aligned on a regular basis. The whole weather and the atmospheric elements have an implication. So there are automation capabilities from a network perspective. Even the ideal state of a device can be changed. How much we touched upon sustainability. There are a lot of activities happening about can we automatically slow down or switch down the device if it is not used. So power consumption can be reduced from that perspective also. So multiple elements of automation are possible right from the customer touch point to the network that is possible. I think the opportunity is much wider compared to fixed line, I feel.
So just
Sure. Thank you.
A quick check on
Here
time,
you go.
just to let everybody know. And since we started about 20 minutes late, TM Forum folks have just informed that we can actually run another 20 minutes into the program, and then there will be, moving the next session 20 minutes up.
Yeah. Yes, Sampath, just to add on, what you said, right? So in 5G, if you see, Open RAN has come up, right? ORAN. And ORAN has a RIC, right? Radio Intelligent Controller. And there is a lot of automation you can do using XApps and RApps, right? RApps is basically non-real time when it collects the data of the networks, uses AI, and then passes it to the relevant near real-time systems, which is basically the XApps. And then, as he said, right, a lot of automation can be built in terms of, for example, you are in a stadium where everybody wants, a good bandwidth. And if the Open RAN detects that and the RIC gets triggered, you can open a new network slice, right? And you see that the bandwidth is given, especially to those customers who have asked for it. So that gives a privilege and ensures that you get the required bandwidth, right? So that is one example of that. Other thing that also automation can be there, see these days, right, most of the network operators have NOC, right? Network Operating System centers. Right, and there, a lot of agents are sitting and then seeing the alarms and then correlating the alarms and fixing the problem. Now, with a lot of automations, there is something called dark NOC. Dark NOC means automated knocks, right? So it will automatically see, and things like, for example, one of your machines is getting overloaded, right? Automatically alarms will be generated. It will see and it will ensure that a standby system can be activated or cache is getting cleared or something like that. It automatically triggers that. So those are the things where with an AI agent, agentic agent, very focused, precise, agents, we can take care of that.
Yeah. Awesome. In fact, when I was studying, none of the backbenchers used to ask any questions. I'm so happy that here we have coming from there.
Okay, thanks.
You should, I don't know if there is the Mobile World Congress folks gave a write-up, but I think there's been a lot of focus. I was there on the last week, but there's a lot of focus about AI application in this space, actually more than the other aspects of telecom. So there are many use cases, and actually many use cases, revenue-generating use cases, not just operational. There was a model that was shown that in a stadium, they have actually implemented it that with private 5G and some of those network slicing concept, they've been able to sell special applications during the course of the match, because many times live audience cannot experience the same thing as the audience we see in the home. So there are a lot of services that can be generated through that as well. So automation is a very wide, I would say, concept. It has huge applicability across some of these cases as well.
So I know we are running late into the next segment, but yeah, please go ahead. I know you have that question.
I think, Ajay from the audience mentioned, I think alarm correlation and making sense out of it, analytics is a key part of that journey as well. So I think we can, obviously with limited time, Abhi, do you want to go ahead and move into the...
No, also I want to make sure that, we also touch upon some of the practicalities of these things, right? So before we move on from this segment, one last question to both of you. Again, it's not so much about when will we get there and what it is, but if we have to take a reality pulse on where we are, maybe we take an example, we talked about events and being able to provide that extra bandwidth. How much of that is auto-configured? How much of that is autonomous today? Maybe that will give a pulse of where we are in terms of autonomous networks versus fully autonomous networks when you look into several years down the lane. So is that even a real use case today that if you have an event, then the slicing is happening dynamically and it's able to configure all of those things autonomously?
Yeah, I'll respond to that and I'll then leave Sampath. I've been just told that the session actually starts in 2:45. So,
Okay.
so I think I was touching again earlier on this that there are a lot of legacy networks or platforms in our ecosystem, and trying to attempt to make everything autonomous is proving to be impossibility. The significant portion of our revenue is on 2-degree legacy network as well. And to migrate all of that into a new latest platform is absolutely not a possibility. It doesn't make cost sense. It doesn't make return sense. But what we are trying to do then is to ensure that our next generation networks and deployments become more and more autonomous. The implication of having these two age generations living together is that single customer may have one product on a new technology and another product on an old technology. So how do you make the overall experience from a customer's perspective as autonomous? That's not possibility. So what we're trying to do is break this down in phases and say that, okay, gradually move on and have this overall ecosystem look at more and more autonomous. I personally feel that the agentic evolution of agentic AI will become much more powerful, because in some cases it will allow you to use AI-based agent, and in other cases you can use manual agents also. So I think a combination of that become reality is making the possibility more and more. So I feel in next couple of years, this should become a significant reality if you don't consider too much about the legacy networks.
So the room was already positive and you just added a lot more positivity to it. Next couple of years seems very...
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vivek.
Please.
I'll leave for the next session.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really appreciate Vivek.
So Abhi, with that said, do you want to segue? Thank you, Vivek. In the essence of time, let's go ahead and create this as the segue to your one of the most awaited segments as well, right? Of course, everything else has been very important, but I mean, data is that next wave.
I was just debating in my mind, should we go data, and how many people, we've all known the problems of data, do you want to open that box, or everybody seems to be very excited about monetization, do you want to go there? But speaking of monetization, what you were saying earlier, so maybe after we are done here, can you tell me what the job description for the autonomous network engineer is? Maybe with how AI is going and the risk of jobs, that looks very promising to me. So.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned about a network autonomist or a network evangelist, something of that sort. But then, yes, of course, he's not just supposed to create those use cases, but also have to analyze whether those use cases are really implementable, or probably you can implement it in some other industries as well. So it's not just about a telecom industry, whether that use case can be further implemented. As I mentioned about the sites, that site could be any other bank ATM site as well. Yeah, so that the same use case can be implemented anywhere. So that's how you probably monetize.
Saying there is enough job security.
Yeah.
So we'll take the segue into data, and maybe we can spend a little bit of time on data here, because I mean, ultimately the quality of everything that we're talking about here, AI, or we're talking about the brain of it, how it functions, right? Autonomy, achieving autonomy, all these things are only as good as what kind of data that you get, right? So garbage in is always going to be garbage out. So from that perspective, and again, this, as if data itself is not complicated, there is additional complications like I think Vivek was mentioning earlier. You have the data that you have the systems that are providing data, you have the network that is providing data, the platforms. So there is so many layers that it can start getting really diluted as well, right? So let's look at operations, for instance. There's customer data, there is operations data, there is other kinds of data as well. So let's break that into two. And if we look at operations data, so what are some of the best practices to deal with this entire complicated mess of data quality and being able to take data and be able to actually use that in the right way, and ensure that your models are you know performant because of good data, right? So how do you deal with that whole mess? It's not an easy mess to deal with, right? So
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, the data quality that you receive is always a challenge. But again, if you focus on the end results as to what we need to achieve, okay. Again, sorry if I'm giving too many examples that we have implemented, but
examples are very good.
Yeah, but that's what we really want to hear.
yeah. So one of the example was, there were customers who were calling, and we used to, because of the topology, we used to try identify where the root cause is. Later on, we tried, because the topology was always kept on changing. Okay, what we did is we tried to use machine learning in terms of the customer logging an SR versus how the dynamics are going on in the network. Over a period of time, we could probably do a kind of we could find the correlation coefficient between the customer's SR and few of the network alarms, which had a higher coefficient of correlation. And that's how we tried to evade, the magnitude of data. I mean, getting into the data problem, what we used to do is we used to leave it to the ML, finding out which alarm or which kind of source alarm correlates the best with the SR that has been logged by the customers. And over a period of time, based on the maturity of that particular model, we used to start pushing those specific alarms to the care team. So that's how we try to evade the data quality kind of.
So essentially, the underlying theme you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, and for the audience as well, if you take the low-hanging fruit use cases or the key use cases and you try to address them and correct your data and your entire pipelining, and you have enough critical mass of such use cases that you built, you already have enough good data that you can work.
And as I said earlier, it's not just about implementing the use case, it is about creating a kind of an AI framework or a AI product that can, any end user should be able to, select various ML algorithms, select the source of the data and generate the output. And based on the output, he can probably, configure a particular agent, okay, for his particular use case. So that's how where we are trying to, reach. You don't need a developer or a backend developer every time to, configure any kind of a use case. You need a kind of a tool. You need a kind of a ML models, okay, and then an end user, any kind of an end user should be able to select, and he should be able to create his own agentic AI.
So real quick, what comes to my mind is when we talk about data with respect to Geo, 400 million plus customers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot.
We're talking lots of data.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So what's the strategy and how do you, what is reality right now from a Geo point of view? And what are the struggles, what are the challenges?
Yeah, strugglers are obviously in terms of, from the development perspective, we had to change a lot of libraries in terms of, because you need a real-time AI output. You cannot say that, my output will come after 40 minutes. Okay, if you are processing the data, you need the data to be available. You need the learning output to be available in next 2 to 3 minutes for an engineer to take an appropriate action to reduce any kind of customer dissatisfaction. So one of the challenges that we faced is in terms of finding out the right library. For example, we were earlier using pandas. We tried to move to polars. So that kind of a change probably has seen a lot of change in terms of processing the data and processing the real-time data and taking appropriate action. So these are the challenges. Even though the data was huge in number, this is how we tried to overcome it.
So, and going from the 2 minutes from an operational perspective that you're talking about to near real-time or real-time on the consumer side. So if you look at the consumer data, that has its own set of challenges. I mean, the market, especially the Indian market, has aced how to work with consumer data, how to upsell, and how to retarget, things like those. But I'm sure there's a lot of really good learnings that came along the
So
way.
what we have successfully done is there is a concept called a JBDL. So basically a huge geo business data lake has been created, wherein standardized cleans data has been put in, and for different use cases, think of it like pulling out water using a bucket. So you need certain type of data, just pull that out and then analyze that, rather than trying to boil the entire ocean. That strategy has helped us come up with real-time insights for that particular use case. So that has been an innovative approach that really helped.
Terrific. So there was a huge segment around this, and we wanted to have a lot more detailed discussions. But again, in the interest of time, just wanted to see if the back benchers, the front benchers, the middle benchers, anybody has any questions? Yeah.
One over here.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is, we did talk about the data, we did talk about the customer experience, the network automation, the AI/ML model, and the pros and cons of it, or the challenges that we are facing. However, when it comes to TM Forum's capabilities, how are we utilizing those to stitch these problems all around? Because the network might be smart with the new network technologies, the applications might be legacy and the new. So it will be a mixture of everything when we are talking about the entire solution. How is TM Forum capabilities helping to stitch that?
Yeah, so earlier, as I mentioned, so when you're creating a product or when you're creating a framework, obviously there will be a plethora of APIs that will be required. Okay, and when you're talking about a product, it's nothing but a component in the ODA language. Okay, so what we ensure doing is that we try to ensure that this particular component that we develop is in line with the ETOM framework, the SID framework, and obviously the APIs that surround that particular application or the component. So that's where the generalization of TM Forum, the standardization of TM Forum's components comes into picture. And if at all I have to sell my product to any other enterprise outside my geo, obviously I do not have to make any changes. Okay, if the other enterprise adheres to the standards laid down by TM Forum, they can probably buy it as is. So that's where the benefit comes into picture.
If I can,
But I think it's also a journey, yeah. But just go ahead.
then I was going to say, I mean, if I can maybe, you can shed more light on this from a geo point of view. But at the end of the day, telecom's network infrastructure is a multi-vendor ecosystem. Right? So interoperability inherently becomes a big issue, and it will continue as an issue, right? Because there's no silver bullet as such. In fact, there is no silver bullet to any of what we spoke of, right? So I think
It's not Gen AI?
I'm sorry.
It's not Gen AI?
There we go, right? So, so I believe that's where organizations such as TM Forum comes into play, where they kind of helps stitch that gap, right?
Yeah.
By bringing somebody's compliances where that interoperability problem ideally will be reduced. So, thus creating opportunities for better network automation. Hope
That is also something as a systems integrator, as we work with different telcos, we are also very conscious about making sure that the models that are being developed or architected towards are compliant with TM Forum. Again, it's like I said, it's going to be a journey, right? So adoption is the biggest problem. The standards and the reference frameworks are there, but adoption is the biggest problem. And the more you start seeing those gravitas, and I think there's going to be some tip-off point where there is going to be enough people or enough organizations will see that by having this kind of a compliance, they're now being able to monetize their models. They're now being monetize their APIs, and the integrations are easier. So their operational costs are going down, right? But I don't think we are. Maybe we are there, but there is a journey towards that. As more and more of that adoption and the reality happens in terms of outcome-driven metrics that are coming out, I'm sure there is going to be a lot more gravity towards that.
And secondly, I mean, there were some legacy, not so legacy kind of applications where it doesn't adhere to, then we probably create an additional wrapper on the top of the APIs, and which ensures that whatever we expose to the outside world is in compliance with the TMF.
All right, so with that said, in the essence of time, we want to kind of... yes.
Sorry, yeah, just one more question.
Yes.
I'm sorry I'm being the statistical anomaly out here, asking my second question. So, quick question about data, considering that AI is going to be exponentially increasing data, storage, and so what are the key considerations that you took, and this is a question to Alhad, in terms of how did you manage and realize how much data you needed to actually save and manage in order to be able to practically provide these capabilities without, let's say, going over cost in terms of storage or processing?
Yeah, so one thing that we have done as a part of this framework is that we do not consume everything. Okay, so let's say, for example, Nokia as a RAN vendor, we do not consume all the counters, all the 7,000 or 8,000 counters. We only consume the counters which are essential in terms of doing the correlation or the autonomous part of it. Okay, so that is one part of it, and then we do not retain the data for a longer period of time. We only retain it on the basis of what the statutory or regulatory compliance is required. Okay, not beyond that. Okay, that's how we do it. But yes, you're right. I mean, we also face this kind of processing crunch, CPU crunch, and storage crunch every time we, try to include any additional use cases in our system.
Thank you.
All right. So I think this brings us to our last segment, which is monetizing network assets, right? Which is a very interesting piece. I know we probably won't have adequate time to complete all the questions, etc. But I just want to kind of start off. I mean, network operators, telecoms spend billions of dollars on their network assets, infrastructure, right? And there should be some means of recovery, ROI, other than taking it out on vendors like us, right? We talk about ROI, then we kind of lead to the question of how does telecoms look at new thinking of monetizing their network assets. So we talk about democratization of APIs, consumption of APIs from the consumers, businesses, etc. How does Jio, as one of the thought leaders, front runners in this space, what has Jio's market entry or strategy been? Start with Nilesh.
So I'll let Allah talk about the network related pieces, but if you look at the new gen technologies like data centers, we are working on many innovative kind of products or services that we are taking to the market. So whether it is GPU as a service, we're working with NVIDIA to create a large farm wherein we'll provide GPU as a service to all other customers. We have a product called GeoBrain, which is AI/ML as a service. So for small and medium enterprises, rather than investing in infrastructure to try out their own AI/ML products, they can use our service directly, wherein we'll have open APIs. We are working on a open telecom AI platform with Cisco and other players, AMD and other players, wherein there will be a central intelligence agents and open APIs for anybody to access the platform, and all the CSPs can go ahead and start collaborating. They can contribute to that platform to develop the different AI models. So these are different ways wherein we can build together with other partners, and at the same time also monetize the AI assets that we have.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, there were some few use cases that I mentioned about, the sustainability part where we tried conserving a lot of diesel. Okay, and this is aligned towards our organization's goal in terms of being carbon neutral by 2035. So that was one of the biggest win that we could achieve as a part of deploying a kind of an ML algorithm. Apart from that, yes, of course, we also try to reduce a lot of truck rolls. I mean, we have improved in terms of our customer satisfaction. Obviously, reducing a lot of truck rolls, around 700 for a particular city, okay, thereby helping in terms of, the operational, reducing the operations cost. Secondly, it's not about, the cost saving. What we also think is that, if we are, let's say, for example, for home customers, we are able to serve 10 million customers with, 25 or 30 people. Using this automation, the same number of people can serve 20 million customers. Okay, so that's something which we are also thinking in terms of, benefiting in terms of rolling out these kind of use cases.
Awesome. Did you have a question?
Not a question, but some of the other monetization pieces that we were looking at, not necessarily only network monetization, but especially from a telco perspective, right? Working with banking industries in terms of, fraud detection and fraud as a service. Because ultimately, if you're looking at it, what the banks are looking at, anytime there is a call coming in, anytime there is a transaction that is happening, they need specific information about, is this a valid customer? All they have is the phone number, the MDN, and maybe the customer name that they're getting. So telcos are primed to kind of take all of that information, and they have the wealth of information. Things like, when was the last SIM card swap that has happened, or has volume increased in that particular SIM card, and things like that. So there's a wealth of information, network information, customer information, location information, all of these things, barring regulatory aspects that you need to work with. But the ability to take all of those and go back and provide that service, whether it is for directly to the financial institutions, or you're doing it through some services that actually aggregator services, things like those. There's a lot of possibility for monetization. Organizations are doing those things today, but there's probably still not gone all the way into how well they can monetize those. For instance, proactive monetization, in the sense that I see a lot of potential fraud that is happening with these kind of MDNs, or fraud circles that are happening. They have all the information for all of these things, right? So how do you start looking proactively into potential frauds that are happening? Multiple banks are reaching out to me for this particular MDN. Is this a valid? Why is that happening, right? So the telcos are primed to have all of this information in a single source, and different institutions are reaching out to them. That is also increasing the data that they're getting in terms of whether it is valid, whether something is happening. So many data points that are coming in on top of what they already have. This can become a huge monetization opportunity that is not yet completely tapped into, right? And similar to that, there are hundreds of use cases that can start going into industries as well.
Interesting. We'll have to take a note of this use case.
Like banks have this service wherein if I have to transfer money to some account number, I can validate whether the account is correct or not, right? For a small fee.
Right.
So this is the opposite to that, wherein bank can validate whether this is the same person with the telco.
And fraud has become so, prevalent and kind of...
Great example. We'll open up to the audience again. We want to hear your thoughts, ideas. I'm sure there are people impatiently waiting. Yes, please.
Hi. Do you look at AI and then look at monetizing it? Or do you look at such use case where you look at customer problem and then look for an AI solution for it?
Good question.
It cuts both ways, I guess. Initially, there can be an idea wherein either to save cost, you can take up a project, or to improve your product or service, you can take up a project. Few times an idea like this can come wherein money is talked first, and then you take up the project.
See, I love asking questions if I don't have to answer. Right? So
No, in fact, if I can take my own point of view on that, I'm a huge AI proponent and AI evangelist, but I would never, maybe barring some exceptions, I would never go to look for a problem because I have a technology in place. Because a solution is never about one technology, right? There can be one driving technology, but it has to be a mix of technologies that are coming together to solve a problem. So look for the problem statements, look for the problem opportunities, and then drive a solution. Don't drive a solution because you'll end up over-engineering for a particular solution, right? So at least that's my take.
Yes, one more question behind you.
Yeah, hi, Mayuresh here again. While we are talking about monetizing, and data is a prime for all the AI solutions, do you think that most of the telcos will move into a data center space as well, where it can become another, stream of revenue for them in terms of infrastructure and providing, AI agents to process that data.
If Amazon doesn't
We are
get into
already
it-
moved in, so I'm sure most of the telcos will get into that, because that's a space wherein for smaller players, the investment is going to be huge, and if they have to pay as they use, then they can certainly go ahead and pay the smaller part of the service that they use, and we can monetize that.
And I think it also goes back to earlier examples about, AI as a service. And some
GPU
of-
as a service.
GPU as a service as well.
Any other questions from the audience? If not, yes, we have.
We've been looking at different revenue streams, while, which is another opportunity for telecom, provider. Now, how is that we looking at monetizing something which is for existing customer using AI?
Is that, so can you repeat the
So
question?
the question is that when we talk about monetizing it, we've been talking about different avenues which we have not been touching so far as a telecom operator, right? What is that we can really monetize using, AI for our existing customers? What is that we can offer them?
As in the captive customers.
Yeah, I can give one example
Yeah,
of how we look at it, right? So for instance, again, this can be a B2B example, for instance, but we can draw parallels to B2Cs as well. But for one of our customers, which is a ONG customer, they have to be very careful. I mean, they have obviously safety and health regulations, they have environmental regulations that they need to follow and all of those things. They have to be very conscious and reactive to anytime there's even a little bit of a fire or some kind of an accident or some kind of a safety hazard that you're seeing that could cause certain things, right? Now, a telco provider who's providing network support for an oil rig, there is X amount of bandwidth that they've already agreed to, and it has to be a very thin bandwidth that they're looking, depending on what you're looking at, right? So, but what we've also started doing with certain other service providers is, typically when you look at generative AI we all use for text-based problems and solutions for those. But there is also video-based generative AI, right? So video-based analysis. Video LLMs, Video Llama is there and things like those. So these are really good at identifying world scenarios. Just like Gen AI can understand, or LLMs can understand text and the correlation between text and everything, video LLMs can understand what is happening in the world, for instance, right? They have a general knowledge of it. So we are taking those contexts and deploying those lightweight LLMs into the edge, which are now looking for specific things that are happening. And it's not specific patterns. If you're looking at computer vision, you're only looking for specific, a pattern that needs to be trained and that is happening that will trigger an alert on. In this case, it is understanding everything that is happening, understands that there could be a potential issue that is happening, or I see a small spark, or a wire that is half open and there's no harness, or things like those. It understands what it is. When it can not only give them information about, proactively you do something about it, but if a hazard happens, that immediately opens up that quick SLA to go back and tell the network provider to give me a lot more bandwidth here, open up a bigger slice for me here, because I have to do a lot of activities, I have to coordinate a lot of things, I have to do real-time processing of everything and give information. So an entire slice opens up then, right? But that is, again, because the customer is using AI to do certain things, it is a upsell opportunity. I mean, God forbid there's no incidents that are happening, but if that happens, these are again monetization of how your network can react to what is happening with additional third-party AIs that are doing. So I'm sure when you start looking at event spaces and things like those, there's so many such existing customers who are using the services that can be commoditized as well. I don't know if that answers what you're looking at, but.
That adds up to what I think the question is more relevant to the retail customer. We've been tapping mostly the B2B and enterprise customers for those revenue streams to look at. But when we look at our existing retail customers, the end consumers, so if a next person is paying 1 rupee, how can
I mean, one way to look at it, especially from a banking perspective, I mean, network APIs, like network providers are having now this network APIs, right? So there are location-based APIs. For example, a use case typically could be, you are a consumer or a customer who is using the network to pay something, right? So the banking application can use the location APIs which is provided by the network to validate. Say, for example, if the call is originated from Saudi Arabia and you are a person who is basically in Mumbai, so they will validate and say, oh, this is a fraud one, okay? And you pay a premium for that, right? So from a network operator perspective, they are exposing the network, they're monetizing the network through this network API. From an banking application or retail application, they say premium because they are guarding your payment, and then, use this whole ecosystem to monetize the existing system. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you.
Backbenchers are rocking today with their
Yeah, I
questions.
know, I think we are missing the fun. The music's already started, the party started
Yes.
downstairs. So.
Hi, I'm Samir from Vodafone. So my question is exactly actually opposite to the subject we are talking about, monetizing telecom using AI. My question is, what are the different use cases where telecom is using AI for the social causes?
Can you elaborate what do you mean by the social causes?
So I guess Alad talked about decreasing the carbon footprint, right? So other than that, do we have any use cases where we can use, or telecom can use AI for different social causes?
So one example that comes to my mind is a project that we are working on, wherein on the education side, wherein we are working on a project wherein using AI and language, so speech to text, text to speech, and translation from Indic languages. We are working on providing top-notch education content to rural areas wherein people don't understand English as a primary language. So that is one of the projects that we are working on, and likewise there will be many other use cases also, I'm sure.
And if you look at, for example, public safety services, like fire engines and firemen and groups like those, there is a lot in terms of hazard management and immediate reaction what needs to happen. So at least one of the use. Yeah, there is a revenue that is coming out of it.
So education is good. Because there are so many languages, plus Indic languages we can say about Sanskrit, Modi or Pali, where we can translate the old scriptures to the where.
One is language and second is availability of good teachers all over the country. So this can solve both those problems.
See, one of the other use cases I see certain parts of the world is this whole creating some sort of enabling STEM education, right? How can, simply said, if you want to let high schoolers, right, explore creating mobile applications, right, creating this ecosystem like a development portal and enabling it to certain schools where they can start introducing Java or Golang or whatever, right? They can start developing their little applications, giving first-hand experience into, hey, how can I now build this little application using SMS capabilities, like Ajay said, location-based capabilities or MMS capabilities, etc. So that's something I've seen telecoms actually do that free of charge. Right? So they open up that capability to the schools, and these students get to experience that. So I mean, that's one example.
So
So since we operate in around 18 countries in MEA, Middle East and Africa, so we are very active in terms of setting up many digital centers to educate many kids and maybe other people also. So a lot of investment goes in that. The second is in case of the healthcare services, because some of the very rural areas and some countries in Africa, they don't have those kind of, so how do we provide good medical facilities? So there are few apps which are freely provided to large number of population. So these are clearly two projects on which Orange as an organization is very, very active, especially in the sub-Saharan African region, I would say.
And telco has eyes everywhere. So and ears. Yeah. But you can put eyes. You have ears. All you need is on camera to make that an eye. So I would imagine that we are able to leverage these cases or these channels of access to look at environmental issues that happen or safety issues on roads, hotspots that are open. It doesn't have to be a monitoring, but we are able to be able to identify what these are and escalate the right departments or organizations to take care of this. It is just an extension to what the capabilities we already have today. I don't think we do these things, but just brainstorming on what you are asking. Those are
So that is why when you asked for one word related to AI, I said opportunity. AI is like a instrument that brings in huge opportunity to solve problems, reduce cost, increase revenue, and also help on social side. So that's how I'd like to conclude.
Good afternoon. My name is Nilesh Kakkar. I am associated with TM Forum as a freelance consultant since last 2 decades. Just for this forum to understand, there are 2 other consortium. I am pleased to let you know that one of the consortium is based in India, set up by Ministry of Electronics and Telecommunication. That is called IUDS. And second one is based out of US, which is called 5Air. So if you are aware, 5Air is a consortium where all FANG companies have set up. And second one is India User Data Exchange Forum, where thanks to that only our Aadhaar is set up, the Aadhaar ID. So both these consortium are frequently sharing the data which can be used by any AI models, including any open AI models. So this consortium are sharing data across healthcare and other education, whatever you mentioned also. So just to let you know, the ODA has been also implemented and deployed for healthcare enterprises across world. That setup is called HERA, Health Enterprises Reference Architecture. So just to let you know that if we are connected with those consortium, we might get into much more visibility about how telecom scenarios are and standards are used across industries.
That is very informative. Thank you so much.
I had an opportunity to work with Ericsson in Sweden to implement the ODA for healthcare enterprises across. And Indian government is also planning to do the similar setup for India government.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We might have those out no matter how much this is, but we are going to be available if anybody has any other questions. We just want to chat, brainstorm here.
All of you have been a great audience, and let's give a round of applause to for joining us, and Nilesh for joining us from Geo, and Alhad again for joining us from Geo on kind of somewhat short notice, etc. But we kind of, it's very interesting, right? I mean, lots of smart minds kind of think alike, and how we kind of see. I saw on one hand there were very interesting different thoughts and opinions that we saw coming up, but at the same time we agreed to agree on certain things, right? And I think we'll go back. Lots of new thinking, lots of pretty good takeaways from this session. Again, thank you for joining us, and on behalf of InfoVision, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Make it.